6 months after the Battle of Kepler Station, Admiral Sora Park stood on the observation deck of Earth's newest space station, watching ships from a dozen different species conduct joint training exercises. The sight would have been impossible to imagine a year ago. Human destroyers flew alongside elegant Alterian cruisers, practicing the kind of chaotic attack patterns that had broken the Void Swarm. Centauri fighters learned evasive maneuvers from human pilots who treated three-dimensional space combat like an art form. Even the proud hegemony battleships were experimenting with human-style modifications. Status report, Sora requested from her aide. The Void Swarm threat has been officially eliminated, reported Captain Donghyun Lee, recently promoted from communications officer to fleet coordinator. Scattered remnants are still being hunted down by combined human-alien task forces, but organized resistance ended 3 weeks ago. Sora nodded. The final campaign had lasted 4 months and involved the most creative military operations in galactic history. Human tactics had evolved from merely chaotic to genuinely artistic. The Void Swarm's perfect logic had been unable to cope with opponents who treated warfare like improvised theater. Admiral Taemin, now promoted to Grand Admiral of the Terran Galactic Fleet, arrived for their scheduled meeting. His uniform showed the wear of constant campaigning, and his face carried the satisfaction of a job well done. "The Galactic Council wants to hold a ceremony," he reported. "Official recognition of humanity's contribution to galactic security. They're calling us the liberators of the galaxy." "How do you want to respond?" asked Sora. Taemin smiled. "Accept graciously, then ask them what else needs liberating." The transformation of galactic military thinking had been rapid and dramatic. Young alien officers competed for positions in human-led training programs. The old textbooks on civilized warfare were being quietly retired in favor of new manuals, with titles like Creative Chaos Theory and Advanced Unpredictability Tactics. Commander Sung Ho had established the Galactic Marine Academy on a small moon near Earth. His students included representatives from every major alien species, all eager to learn the art of close-quarters combat from the masters. "The key to human tactics," he explained to his current class, "is accepting that your plan will probably fail. Once you accept that, you can prepare for failure so thoroughly that failure becomes just another tool in your arsenal." A young Alterian Marine raised her hand. "But Commander, how do we coordinate attacks if everyone expects their plans to fail?" Sung Ho grinned. "That's the beautiful part. When everyone's plan fails at the same time, you get magnificent chaos, and humans are very good at fighting in chaos." Captain Mi Young commanded the newest human flagship, the Busan's Vengeance, a ship designed specifically for multi-species crews. Her bridge included human officers working alongside alien specialists, creating a command structure that combined human creativity with alien technical expertise. "Tactical exercise complete," she announced to her mixed crew. "Assessment?" Her Centauri navigation officer spoke up first. "The human approach to three-dimensional maneuvering is gone educational. We achieved objectives that should have been impossible." "And?" prompted Mi Young. "And we also lost 2/3 of our simulated fleet in the process." Mi Young nodded. "Standard. Human success ratio. Next time we'll aim for 50% losses." Dr. Yoonji had been promoted to Director of Xenobiological Research for the entire Galactic Council. Her laboratory was now the size of a small city, staffed by scientists from dozens of species who had overcome their horror at her methods and embraced her results. "Project status," she requested from her assistant, Dr. Kethnal. "The Chaos virus research has been incredibly successful," he reported. "We've developed countermeasures for 17 different types of AI warfare systems. The biological warfare protocols have been adapted for use against 12 other potential threats." "Other threats?" asked Yoonji. "The Council's intelligence services have identified several dormant dangers in the galaxy. Ancient weapon systems, abandoned AI networks, and at least 3 sleeping alien war machines that make the Void Swarm look friendly." Yoonji smiled. "Excellent, I was getting bored." Dr. Jin Ho coordinated the massive industrial effort required to rebuild the galaxy's defense infrastructure. Human engineering principles, fast, functional, and repairable, were being adopted by alien shipyards across known space. Production report, he announced at the weekly military briefing. We now have 4,000 ships incorporating human design principles. They're not as elegant as traditional alien vessels, but they can be repaired in the field and modified for specific missions. Admiral Tae-min reviewed the specifications. How do they perform in combat? Extremely well. The alien crews are learning to think tactically instead of just technologically. Casualty rates are down 70% from pre-human standards. But the most significant change was happening at the diplomatic level. Ambassador Hyun-woo, now Earth's permanent representative to the Galactic Council, found himself mediating disputes between species who were still adjusting to the new reality. The hegemony is complaining again, reported his aide. They say human tactical training is making their junior officers dangerously creative. What's the specific incident this time? Asked Hyun-woo. A hegemony patrol squadron encountered pirates in the Outer Rim. Instead of following standard engagement protocols, they used a modified version of the broken chain maneuver. The pirates surrendered without firing a shot. Hyun-woo frowned. That sounds like a success. It was. That's why the hegemony high command is worried. Their officers are starting to solve problems instead of just following orders. The ripple effects of human influence extended far beyond military matters. Alien societies were experiencing what their sociologists called creative contamination. Young aliens were questioning traditional approaches to everything from art to architecture to interstellar commerce. On Alteria Prime, traditional poetry was being challenged by a new style that incorporated human concepts like meaningful chaos and organized confusion. Centauri engineers were designing ships that were deliberately asymmetrical because irregular patterns were harder for enemies to predict. Even the normally rigid hegemony was experiencing changes. Their latest generation of starships included what they called tactical flexibility options, systems designed to fail in useful ways during combat. Captain Sora reviewed intelligence reports from across the galaxy. The Void Swarm was finished, but humanity's presence had awakened interest in other long-dormant threats. Threat assessment, she requested from her intelligence chief. 17 potential galactic-level dangers have been identified. Ancient, war machines, rogue AI networks, and several species that went into hibernation to avoid extinction. Our analysis suggests that at least 3 of these threats will become active within the next decade. Recommendations? Continue building the combined fleet. Expand human tactical training programs. Prepare for the assumption that the galaxy is a fundamentally hostile place that requires constant vigilance. Sora smiled. In other words, continue being human. Exactly. The final meeting of the Galactic Security Council included representatives from every major species. The topic was humanity's permanent role in galactic defense. Ambassador Veltar, now a strong advocate for human methods, opened the discussion. The question before us is simple. Do we want the humans to return to their home system now that the immediate crisis has passed, or do we want them to remain as permanent members of galactic civilization? The debate lasted 6 hours. Some species argued that humanity was too dangerous to integrate fully into galactic society. Others pointed out that every major threat they had identified would require exactly the kind of creative solutions that only humans seemed capable of providing. The final vote was unanimous. Humanity would become a permanent member of the Galactic Council, with special responsibility for defense against existential threats. Admiral Tae-min received the news while standing on the bridge of his flagship, watching human and alien ships patrol the edges of known space. The galaxy was at peace for the first time in centuries, but it was a peace maintained by constant readiness for war. How do you feel about becoming permanent galactic peacekeepers? Asked Captain Mi-young over the communication system. Tae-min looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, new threats were stirring. Ancient weapons were awakening. Dormant enemies were beginning to move. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and full of things that wanted to destroy everything humans had learned to love. I feel like we're exactly where we belong, he replied. Dr. Yoonji's voice joined the conversation from her research station. I've been analyzing the long-term threat projections. The galaxy is going to need us for a very long time. Good. said Commander Sung Ho from his training facility. I was worried we might run out of interesting enemies. The human fleet continued its patrol, moving through space like a pack of wolves guarding a flock of sheep. Behind them, alien worlds slept peacefully under the protection of species that had learned to fight like the universe itself was their enemy. The aliens had called for help against an unstoppable threat. They had expected to receive advanced technology, superior firepower, and civilized military. Admiral Taemin stood in the medical bay of Kepler Station, looking at the casualty reports. The numbers were staggering. 143 human ships had been destroyed or damaged beyond repair. Over 8,000 crew members were dead, wounded, or missing. For any civilized species, these losses would represent a catastrophe that would take generations to recover from. For humans, it was Tuesday. Casualty assessment complete, sir, reported Dr. So-Jin Park, the fleet's chief medical officer. We have 4,000 wounded requiring immediate treatment, 2,000 in critical condition, and approximately 2,000 missing crew members presumed dead. Taemin nodded grimly. Reconstruction timeline? 6 months for full fleet rebuild, assuming we can get replacement parts and crew from Earth. We don't have 6 months. What can we do in 6 weeks? Dr. So-Jin consulted her data pad. Half the fleet operational, maybe 60% if we cannibalize the worst damaged ships for parts. Do it. Ambassador Veltar watched this conversation with growing horror. The humans were discussing devastating losses as if they were routine maintenance issues. Admiral, Veltar said carefully, perhaps your forces should return to Earth for proper recovery and refit. The Galactic Council can handle cleanup operations. Cleanup operations? Taemin interrupted. The Void Swarm isn't finished. They're regrouping in the Outer Rim. If we give them time to adapt to our tactics, they'll be back with countermeasures. But your losses are acceptable for the strategic victory achieved. Taemin's tone was matter-of-fact. We knew this would be expensive. We prepared for it. Captain Mi Young limped through the corridors of Kepler Station on a broken leg, coordinating rescue operations. The Soul's Fury had been completely destroyed in her ramming attack, but somehow 70% of her crew had survived in escape pods. She found Commander Sung Ho in the engineering section, supervising repairs to a captured Void Swarm vessel. His Marines had taken the ship intact, and now human technicians were trying to figure out how it worked. How many did you lose? She asked. 43 Marines, Sung Ho replied without looking up from his work. Could have been worse. The machines don't understand close-quarters combat, so once we got inside their ships, it was mostly a matter of finding the right buttons to push. Mi Young nodded. In human military culture, losing 43 soldiers to capture an enemy capital ship was considered a bargain. The aliens were still trying to understand how humans could be so casual about death. Dr. Yoonji worked around the clock in her temporary laboratory, studying Void Swarm remains with the enthusiasm of a child opening birthday presents. The battle had provided her with more alien technology than she had ever dreamed of examining. Fascinating, she murmured to her assistant, Dr. Kethnal, who had volunteered to help despite his species' horror at her research methods. The machines were designed to be perfect, but perfection is actually a weakness. They can't handle truly random inputs. Is that why your biological viruses were so effective? Asked Kethnal. Exactly. Their systems are designed to process logical data. When I fed them pure chaos, random numbers, contradictory instructions, nonsense poetry, their processors couldn't handle it. She held up a piece of damaged swarm neural network. This component literally burned out trying to calculate the meaning of a human haiku. Dr. Jin Ho coordinated the recovery efforts from his mobile command center. Human ships were designed to be repaired quickly and efficiently, often using parts from other damaged vessels. Within days, ships that should have taken months to rebuild were limping back into service. The alien shipyards want to help, he reported to Taemin, but their repair methods are too slow. They want to completely rebuild each ship to original specifications. We just need them functional enough to fight. How functional? Asked Taemin. 50% weapons capacity, basic life support, engines that work most of the time. Jinho shrugged. Standard human space combat requirements. The aliens watched these repair efforts with amazement and terror. human-repaired ships held, together with improvised welds, jury-rigged systems, and what appeared to be hope and determination. By civilized standards, they were death traps. By human standards, they were ready for battle. Captain Hyun-woo spent his time analyzing intercepted Void Swarm communications. The machines were definitely regrouping, and their signals showed signs of adaptation to human tactics. "They're learning," he reported to the command staff. "The next wave will have countermeasures for our jamming techniques, better anti-boarding protocols, and improved chaos resistance." "How long do we have?" asked Taemin. 3 weeks, maybe 4 before they attack again." Commander Sung-ho looked up from his captured ship schematics. "Good. That gives us time to think of something even more unreasonable." The psychological impact on the Galactic Council was enormous. For the first time in their recorded history, they had witnessed the total defeat of a seemingly unstoppable enemy. But the methods used had challenged everything they thought they knew about civilized warfare. Coordinator Quindes sent daily reports to the Council describing human activities. His messages revealed growing confusion about humanity's true nature. "They repair their ships with materials that would never pass safety inspections," one report read. "They volunteer for missions with casualty rates above 90%. They sing songs while performing dangerous maintenance work. I believe they may be collectively insane." But other alien officers were beginning to see advantages in human methods. Lieutenant Colves of the Alterian Marines had been training with Sung-ho's forces, and his reports were more positive. "Human tactics are chaotic," he wrote, "but their chaos is organized. They plan for their plans to fail, so when everything goes wrong, they're ready to improvise. They treat disaster as an opportunity rather than a defeat." Dr. Yoonji made a breakthrough in her analysis of Void Swarm technology. Working with captured neural networks, she discovered that the machines had a critical vulnerability that no one had suspected. "They're afraid," she announced to the assembled researchers. The room fell silent. "Afraid?" asked Dr. Kethnal. "But they're machines. They don't experience emotion." "They don't experience emotion as we understand it," Yoonji agreed. "But they have a programmed response to existential threats. When they encounter something they can't understand or predict, they trigger a self-preservation protocol that makes them extremely cautious." "And humans are something they can't understand?" Yoonji smiled. "We're the first truly chaotic intelligence they've ever encountered. Every time they try to predict our behavior, we do something that makes no logical sense. Their self-preservation protocols are screaming constant warnings. This information changed everything. The Void Swarm wasn't just confused by human tactics, they were actually afraid of humanity's unpredictability." Admiral Taemin called a meeting of all surviving human officers. The conference room was crowded with bandaged, tired people who should probably have been in the medical bay. "Intelligence assessment," he began. "The enemy is afraid of us. They're adapting their tactics, but adaptation takes time, and they're being cautious because they can't predict what we'll do next." Captain Mi-young raised her hand. "Recommendation? We hit them again before they finish adapting. Fast, hard, and with tactics so insane that their self-preservation protocols trigger complete retreat." Commander Sung-ho grinned despite his exhaustion. "How insane are we talking?" "Insane enough that even we're not sure it will work." The room erupted in tired laughter. The humans were exhausted, wounded, and operating ships held together with improvised repairs. By any reasonable standard, they should have been evacuating to Earth for recovery and reinforcement. Instead, they were planning to attack an enemy that still outnumbered them 10-1. Ambassador Veltar attended the meeting as an observer. What he saw convinced him that humans were either the bravest species in the galaxy or the most suicidal, possibly both. "Admiral," he said quietly, "your forces have already achieved the impossible. Perhaps it would be wise to consolidate your gains and prepare for a defensive campaign." Taemin looked at him with genuine surprise. "Ambassador, the enemy is afraid of us. They're confused, scattered, and trying to figure out how to fight opponents who don't follow any logical patterns." He stood up, addressing the room. "This is exactly when you attack." The meeting lasted 4 hours. By the end, they had developed an operational plan that made their previous tactics look conservative and sensible. Dr. Jinho summarized the strategy in his final report. Phase 1. Confuse the enemy. Phase 2. When they're confused, confuse them more. Phase 3. While they're trying to figure out what we're doing, hit them with something completely different. As the battered human fleet prepared for their next impossible mission, the aliens watched with a mixture of admiration and terror. They had called for help against an unstoppable enemy. They had received allies who were more dangerous than anything the galaxy had ever seen. And those allies were just getting started. The Void Swarm had awakened humanity's interest in galactic warfare. That was going to be their biggest mistake. The Void Swarm arrived at the Kepler system exactly when their calculations predicted they would. 6,000 ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their dark hulls gleaming like oil on water. They moved with the precision of a machine because that's exactly what they were. Admiral Taemin watched them approach from the bridge of his flagship. The alien fleet took their traditional positions, elegant battle lines designed to maximize firepower while maintaining proper formation. Everything looked exactly like the tactical simulations the Galactic Council had been running for weeks. Enemy, fleet at 2 million kilometers and closing, reported his tactical officer. Good, said Taemin. Signal the fleet. Execute broken chain protocol. Around him, the bridge crew began shutting down non-essential systems. The lights dimmed, weapons powered down. To any observer, the human flagship appeared to be having technical difficulties. Across the system, 237 human ships began experiencing similar problems. Within minutes, half the human fleet had gone dark. Ambassador. Veltar's panicked voice came over the communications channel. Admiral Taemin, your ships are malfunctioning. We're reading massive system failures across your entire fleet. Everything's working perfectly, Taemin replied calmly. But your ships are going offline. No, they're going hunting. The Void Swarm's lead elements reached optimal firing range and opened fire on the alien battle line. Energy beams lanced across space, striking shields and armor in brilliant flashes. The civilized fleets returned fire with their own weapons, and the battle began exactly as every galactic conflict had begun for the past 1,000 years, except for one thing. The humans were gone. Captain Mi Young crouched in the darkened bridge of the Soul's Fury, watching her displays through night vision equipment. Her ship was running on minimum power, drifting through space like a piece of debris. Around her, dozens of other human vessels did the same, invisible to the Void Swarms. Sensors. Target acquired, whispered her navigation officer. Swarm command ship. Bearing 27 Mark IV. Mi Young smiled in the darkness. Take us in. Silent running until we're close enough to see their windows. The Soul's Fury crept through the battlefield like a ghost. Behind her, the main battle raged as alien and machine forces exchanged fire at long range. Neither side paid attention to the small, dead-looking ships drifting through the debris field. Commander Sung Ho stood in the cramped confines of his assault transport, checking his equipment one final time. Around him, 200 Marines did the same. They wore heavy combat suits designed for fighting in the vacuum of space and the cramped corridors of enemy ships. Remember, he told his troops over the comm system, these machines think logically. They calculate optimal responses to expected threats. But they've never fought anyone stupid enough to break into their houses during a firefight. The transport ship drifted alongside a massive Void Swarm vessel, matching its course and speed. Sung Ho's pilot was an artist at stealth flying, the kind of crazy person who thought hiding next to an enemy ship was a perfectly reasonable tactic. Docking in 30 seconds, reported the pilot. Try not to break their ship too badly. No promises, replied Sung Ho. At the edge of the system, Captain Hyun-woo commanded a modified destroyer that had been stripped of everything except engines, armor, and the most powerful jamming equipment Earth had ever built. His job was to confuse the Void Swarm's communications network. The machines relied on constant data sharing to coordinate their attacks. Every ship was connected to every other ship, sharing tactical information and adapting to enemy behavior in real time. It was their greatest strength. It was also their greatest weakness. "Jamming array at full power," reported his electronics officer. "We're broadcasting on every frequency the swarm uses for internal communications." "What are we broadcasting?" asked Hyunwoo. "Random numbers, fake tactical data, and the complete works of human poetry translated into machine code." Hyunwoo grinned. The poetry was a nice touch. Dr. Yoonji's biological warfare protocols activated simultaneously across 17 human ships. She had spent weeks developing what she called organic chaos viruses, microscopic programs that infected void swarm systems, not with superior technology, but with pure randomness. Unlike traditional computer viruses, her creations didn't try to destroy enemy systems. They just made everything slightly wrong. Navigation calculations became imprecise. Targeting systems developed minor delays. Communication protocols started dropping random words. The effect was subtle at first. Void swarm ships began making small errors, missing shots by tiny margins, arriving at coordinates a few seconds late, transmitting incomplete status reports. But in a system designed for perfect efficiency, small errors multiplied rapidly. Seoul's Fury reached ramming distance of the swarm command ship without being detected. Mi Young's crew had practiced this maneuver dozens of times, but never against a target that could vaporize them with a single shot. "Full power to engines," she ordered. "All hands, brace for impact." The destroyer accelerated from near zero to maximum velocity in 8 seconds. The Void Swarm command ship had just enough time to register the incoming threat before 3,000 tons of human-engineered fury slammed into its hull at relativistic speed. The explosion lit up half the solar system. But instead of destroying the human ship, the collision triggered a carefully planned separation protocol. The Seoul's Fury had been designed to break apart on impact, with each section containing a full crew and emergency shelters. "Hull breach successful," reported Mi Young from her escape pod. "Commence boarding operations." Sung-ho's Marines poured through the gaps torn in the command ship's armor. They moved through the corridors like a plague, setting charges, destroying control nodes, and spreading chaos throughout the vessel's internal systems. The Void Swarm had calculated optimal responses to energy weapons, missile attacks, and ramming attempts. But they had never calculated what to do when enemy soldiers were loose inside their ships during a battle. "Reactor room secured," reported Sung-ho over the tactical network, setting charges for maximum confusion rather than destruction. His explosives weren't designed to destroy the ship. They were designed to make it malfunction in creative and unpredictable ways. When they detonated, the command vessel began broadcasting false orders to the rest of the swarm fleet. Admiral Taemin watched the battle develop from his command center. The alien fleets were fighting bravely, but they were losing. Their orderly formations were being systematically destroyed by superior Void Swarm firepower. But the swarm was starting to make mistakes. Ships were firing at empty space. Formations were breaking apart as vessels received contradictory orders. Several swarm vessels had actually begun shooting at each other after receiving Hyunwoo's false tactical data. "Phase 2, ordered Taemin. "All ships, light them up." Across the battlefield, human ships that had been drifting silently through space suddenly came alive. Engines ignited, weapons powered up, and 200 warships began moving at maximum acceleration toward the confused swarm formations. The Void Swarm tried to adapt to this new threat, but their tactical algorithms had never encountered anything like human attack patterns. The humans didn't advance in formation. They didn't follow predictable routes. Each ship seemed to be making up its own plan as it went along. Some human vessels charged straight at the enemy in suicidal attacks that turned out not to be suicidal. Others pretended to retreat while actually laying traps. Several ships appeared to be completely out of control, tumbling through space while somehow still managing to hit their targets. Dr. Jin Ho coordinated the technical aspects of the assault from his science vessel. "Swarm adaptation protocols are overloading," he reported. "They're trying to calculate responses to 17 different tactical approaches simultaneously." "And?" asked Taemin. "They're starting to freeze up. Too many variables, not enough processing, power to handle genuine chaos. The tide of battle began to turn. Void swarm ships that had been operating with machine precision started making critical errors. Their perfect formations dissolved into confusion, as individual vessels received contradictory orders or simply stopped responding to commands. Captain Mi-young, now commanding her battle from an escape pod, watched a swarm destroyer attempt to retreat from combat. The ship's navigation system had been infected by Yunji's chaos virus, and instead of jumping to safety, it materialized inside an asteroid field. "Oops," said Mi-young cheerfully. Sung-ho's Marines had spread throughout the Yao swarm command ship like a virus, capturing critical systems and turning the vessel's own weapons against its allies. The massive ship was now firing on other swarm vessels while broadcasting surrender messages in 17 different languages. "Sir," reported one of his sergeants, "we've taken the bridge. The ship's computer is asking if we'd like to format its hard drive." "Tell it yes," replied Sung-ho, "but slowly. We want the other ships to watch." As the battle reached its climax, Ambassador Veltar realized that he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. The unstoppable void swarm was not just being defeated, it was being humiliated. Human tactics had reduced the galaxy's most feared enemy to a collection of confused, malfunctioning machines that couldn't coordinate their attacks or... Admiral Taemin stood in the intelligence center of Kepler Station, watching the latest recordings from the front lines. The void swarm had just finished consuming the Theta Centauri system, and the alien cameras had captured every horrible detail. The machines moved like a plague of metal locusts. They swept across planets in perfect formations, their energy weapons carving up continents with surgical precision. Each ship knew exactly where to go, exactly what to destroy, exactly how to convert matter into more of themselves. "Terrifying efficiency," murmured Dr. Jin-ho, standing beside him. "No," said Taemin, studying the patterns. "Predictable efficiency. Look at how they approach each planet. Same formation every time, same targeting priorities, same resource allocation algorithms." He smiled grimly. "They're machines, all right, and machines can be hacked." Beside him, Commander Sung-ho watched a recording of void swarm ships boarding an alien space station. The machines cut through the hull with plasma cutters, advanced through the corridors in single file, and systematically eliminated all resistance. "They don't even post guards," Sung-ho observed. "They just assume their calculations are correct." He chuckled. "They've never met anyone crazy enough to fight back after the battle is supposedly over." 3 days later, Captain Mi-young received new orders that made her crew very nervous. They were to modify the Soul's Fury for close proximity combat operations. This involved removing most of their long-range sensors and replacing them with armor plating, short-range missile pods, and ram plates. "Captain," asked her weapons officer, "what's our maximum effective range going to be?" Mi-young checked the specifications. "About 50 meters. 50 meters? Ma'am, that's almost close enough to shake hands with the enemy." "Exactly. Hard to miss at that range." The alien observers were horrified. Ambassador Veltar called an emergency meeting with Taemin to discuss the modifications. "Admiral, your ships are becoming less capable, not more capable," Veltar protested. "You're reducing your range, limiting your sensors, and making yourselves vulnerable to enemy fire." "We're making ourselves unpredictable," Taemin replied. "These machines have been fighting enemies who attack from long range with energy weapons. They've calculated optimal responses to that kind of warfare, but they've never fought anyone who gets close enough to punch them." Dr. Yunji emerged from her laboratory with a report that made the alien scientists deeply uncomfortable. She had been studying void swarm neural networks for 2 weeks, and her conclusions were disturbing. "The machines adapt to enemy tactics," she announced to the gathered researchers, "but only within logical parameters. They learn from direct observation and adjust their responses accordingly. However, they have no way to process truly random behavior." Dr. Kethnal raised one of his 4 hands. "What do you mean by random behavior?" Yunji smiled. "Human behavior. We don't always do the logical thing. Sometimes we do something stupid because we're angry, or something brilliant because we're desperate, or something completely insane because it might work." She pulled up a holographic display showing human brain scans. Our decision-making process includes emotional responses, intuitive leaps, and calculated risks that no computer would ever take. That sounds inefficient, observed another alien scientist. It is inefficient. It's also unpredictable, adaptive, and very hard to counter. Yunji's smile grew wider. I've been running simulations. The Void Swarm's tactical algorithms are designed to respond to logical opponents. When faced with illogical opponents, they start making errors. Meanwhile, Sung-Ho was training selected alien troops in human combat techniques. The lessons were not going well. When the enemy expects you to retreat, he explained to a group of confused alien soldiers, that's when you charge. When they expect you to charge, that's when you hide. When they expect you to hide, that's when you surrender. And when they expect you to surrender, that's when you charge again? Guessed Lieutenant Colves of the Alterian Marines. No, that's when you set off the explosives you planted while they thought you were hiding. The aliens stared at him in horror. Commander Sung-Ho, said Colves carefully, how does anyone ever trust anyone in human warfare? They don't. That's the point. Back in his quarters, Taemin reviewed intelligence reports from across the galaxy. The Void Swarm was advancing on 17 fronts simultaneously, consuming everything in its path. Galactic Council forces had won exactly 0 battles in the past month. Dr. Jinho knocked on his door with a data pad full of tactical analyses. The aliens are losing because they're fighting the wrong war, Jinho reported. They keep trying to out-technology the machines. Better shields, more powerful weapons, faster ships. But the swarm adapts to all of that. What do we have that they don't? Taemin asked. Creativity, desperation, the willingness to try stupid things just to see what happens. Jinho sat down. Admiral, these aliens have been peaceful for so long that they've forgotten how to be mean. They fight like they expect their enemies to follow rules. And the machines? The machines follow their own rules perfectly. They just can't handle opponents who don't follow any rules at all. The next morning, Taemin called a meeting of all human senior officers. The conference room was packed with captains, commanders, and specialists who had spent the past week studying alien warfare and finding it completely inadequate. New operational doctrine, Taemin announced. We're not going to fight the Void Swarm the way the aliens expect. We're not going to fight them the way they expect. We're going to fight them the way we've always fought. Like our lives depend on it and rules are suggestions. Captain Myung raised her hand. What about coordination with our allies? We'll coordinate when it helps us win. We'll abandon coordination when it doesn't. The aliens want to save their civilization. We're going to save their civilization, but we're going to do it our way. Commander Sung-Ho grinned. Finally, I was getting tired of being civilized. Dr. Yunji pulled out her latest research. I've identified 17 critical weaknesses in Void Swarm tactical algorithms. All of them can be exploited by sufficiently irrational behavior. Define sufficiently irrational, requested Dr. Jinho. Suicide. Attacks that turn out not to be suicide attacks. Retreats that are actually advances. Weapons that work better when they're broken. Ships that become more dangerous after they've been disabled. Yunji looked around the room. Standard human. Tactics, in other words. The meeting lasted 6 hours. By the end, they had developed what would later be called the Deathworld Doctrine. A comprehensive approach to warfare based on the assumption that your enemy was smarter, stronger, and better equipped than you, but had never learned to fight dirty. 3 days later, Coordinator Quindes visited the human fleet for a routine inspection. What he found made him question his own sanity. The humans had modified their ships beyond recognition. Some vessels were covered in armor plating, so thick they looked like flying asteroids. Others were stripped down to engines and weapons built for pure speed. Several ships had been converted into giant boarding pods designed to ram enemy vessels and disgorge Marines into their corridors. Admiral Taemin, Quindes said slowly, these modifications make no tactical sense. That's the idea, Taemin replied cheerfully. The machines calculate optimal responses to sensible enemy behavior. so we're going to be as nonsensical as possible. But how do you coordinate attacks if your ships all have different capabilities? We don't coordinate. We improvise. Quindess stared at him. That sounds like chaos. Controlled chaos. Our specialty. As word of human preparations spread through the alien fleet, reactions were mixed. Some alien officers were intrigued by the creative approach. Others were horrified by the complete abandonment of military protocol. Ambassador Veltar sent daily reports to the Galactic Council describing human activities. His messages grew increasingly concerned. They are planning to attack the enemy with broken ships, one report read. They speak of victory through defeat and success through failure. I fear we have allied ourselves with madmen. But as more Void Swarm attacks succeeded across the galaxy, even the most civilized aliens began to wonder if madness might be exactly what they needed. The machines were perfect. They were logical. They were unstoppable. The humans were none of those things. And in the cold mathematics of galactic warfare, that was starting to look like an advantage. As Taman stood on his bridge, watching his modified fleet conduct drills that looked more like controlled disasters than military exercises, he felt confident for the first time since leaving Earth. The Void Swarm had calculated how to defeat every civilized species in the galaxy, but they had never tried to calculate how to defeat anyone quite as uncivilized as humanity. Soon, they would get their chance to try. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler Station like stones falling into calm water. Admiral Taman stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the massive alien structure through the view screen. The station was beautiful. All smooth curves and glowing lights like a piece of art floating in space. It's bigger than New Tokyo, whispered his navigation officer. Taman nodded. Around the station, he could see alien ships in perfect formations. They moved like dancers, each one keeping exact distance from the others. Everything was organized, clean, and peaceful. Sir, we're receiving a transmission, reported the communications officer. Put it through. The view screen changed to show a tall, blue-skinned alien with 6 arms and eyes like jewels. When it spoke, the translator made its voice sound formal and polite. Greetings, warriors of Earth. I am Ambassador Veltar of the Alterian Republic. We welcome you to this gathering of civilized species. Your arrival brings hope to our darkest hour. Taman stepped forward. I'm Admiral Taman Cho. We got your message. Where's the enemy? The alien seemed surprised by the direct question. They are currently advancing through the Outer Rim systems. We estimate they will arrive here in 43 standard days. This gives us time to coordinate our forces and plan a proper defense. 43 days? Taman frowned. Why are we waiting? Where are they now? Admiral, surely you understand the importance of proper military planning. We must follow established protocols, coordinate with all allied fleets, and ensure our formations are... While you're planning, they're eating planets, Taman interrupted. Show me everything you have on these machines. An hour later, Taman sat in a conference room with alien military leaders from 12 different species. They all looked similar, despite their different shapes, clean uniforms, perfect posture, and an air of quiet confidence. They reminded him of the worst type of academy graduates. Military Coordinator Quindess, a reptilian creature with silver scales, activated a holographic display. These are the Void Swarm forces currently advancing on our position. The hologram showed thousands of dark ships moving in precise geometric patterns. They advanced in waves, each one perfectly timed and positioned. It looked like a computer simulation. How do they fight? Asked Captain Mi-young, who had joined the meeting. With devastating efficiency, replied Quindess. They calculate optimal firing solutions, maintain perfect formations, and adapt their tactics based on observed enemy behavior. Mi-young studied the display. What about flanking attacks? Hit-and-run tactics, diversionary strikes? The aliens looked confused. I'm sorry, I don't understand these terms. Taman leaned forward. How do you usually fight your wars? Ambassador Veltar gestured to another hologram showing a typical galactic battle. 2 fleets faced each other across empty space, firing energy beams back and forth like ancient sailing ships. Everything was orderly and predictable. We maintain Battle lines to maximize firepower efficiency, explained Veltar. Both sides maneuver for advantage while minimizing casualties. When one side gains a decisive technological edge, the other surrenders honorably. What about boarding actions? Asked Commander Sung Ho Kang, leader of Earth's Marine Forces. Boarding actions? Veltar's translator seemed to struggle with the concept. You mean going inside enemy ships? While they're shooting at you? That's usually when it's most effective, Sung Ho replied dryly. The meeting continued for 3 more hours. The humans asked about supply lines, weak points, manufacturing centers, and civilian evacuation procedures. The aliens kept returning to formation flying, honor codes, and technological superiority. Finally, Dr. Yoon-ji Kim, the fleet's chief scientist, spoke up. Has anyone tried biological warfare against the Void Swarm? The room went completely silent. Several aliens actually stepped away from her. Biological warfare is forbidden under the Galactic Convention of Civilized Combat, whispered Quindess. No honorable species would even consider such methods. What about psychological warfare? Misinformation campaigns? Terror tactics? More silence. Veltar looked like he was going to be sick. Dr. Kim, he said slowly, these methods are used only by the most primitive and barbaric species. Surely Earth has evolved beyond such effective strategies, suggested Taemin. After the meeting, the alien leaders held their own conference. Taemin wasn't invited, but human listening devices were much better than the aliens realized. I'm beginning to doubt the wisdom of contacting them, said Veltar's voice through the hidden microphones. They ask disturbing questions. They seem to view warfare as some kind of survival activity. Their tactical suggestions are horrifying, agreed Quindess. Boarding enemy ships? Attacking supply lines? What manner of creatures are these? Perhaps they've simply never experienced civilized warfare, suggested another voice. We can teach them proper protocols. Back on his ship, Taemin called together his senior officers. The conference room was cramped and functional, nothing like the elegant alien meeting spaces. Initial assessment? He asked. Captain Mi Young spoke first. They're impressive in some ways. Advanced technology, massive industrial capacity, sophisticated logistics. But they fight like they're playing a game. The enemy is pure logic, added Dr. Jin-Ho Lee, who had been studying the Void Swarm data. It adapts to enemy tactics, but only within predictable parameters. It's never faced anything truly chaotic. Commander Sung Ho leaned back in his chair. These aliens have been fighting clean wars for so long they've forgotten how to be ugly, when they need to be. The machines are going to eat them alive. Unless, said Dr. Yoon-ji with a smile that made several officers uncomfortable, we show them how Earth fights. Taemin nodded. The aliens want us to integrate into their formations, follow their protocols, and fight like civilized beings. He paused. We're going to do exactly what we always do. We're going to win whatever it takes. The next few days were educational for both sides. The aliens assigned integration officers to help the human ships learn proper galactic combat procedures. The humans listened politely and then immediately began modifying their ships for close-range combat. When Coordinator Quindess saw Earth ships installing ram plates on their hulls, he demanded an explanation. In case we need to ram something, explained Mi Young reasonably. Ram something? You mean deliberately crash your ship into an enemy vessel? Only if shooting it doesn't work. Quindess stared at her for a long moment. And what happens to your crew during a ramming attack? Depends on how good they are at bracing for impact. That night, Quindess sent an urgent message to the Galactic Council. The humans are insane. They view spacecraft as disposable weapons. They speak casually of suicide attacks as if discussing the weather. What have we invited into our galaxy? Bree, no. Council's response was simple. We need them. Dr. Yoon-ji spent her time studying captured Void Swarm technology with disturbing enthusiasm. While the alien scientists approached the machines with fear and respect, she dissected them like a child. Taking apart a toy. Fascinating, she murmured, examining a piece of swarm neural network. They've eliminated all random elements from their decision-making process. Pure efficiency, no creativity, no intuition. She looked up at her alien colleagues. They've never encountered anything like human thinking. What makes human thinking so special? Asked Dr. Kethnal, a scientist from the Centauri Federation. Yunji smiled. We're the only species in the galaxy that learned to fight by trying to kill each other for millions of years. Everyone else became civilized first. We became civilized despite ourselves. As the days passed, more alien observers came to watch the human fleet. They took notes on Earth's primitive tactics and barbaric weapons modifications. They were particularly disturbed by the humans' habit of practicing boarding drills during their spare time. Why do they train so obsessively? Asked Ambassador Veltar. Because, replied Hyunwoo, who had been appointed as Earth's liaison, we assume that everything we plan will go wrong, the enemy will be stronger than expected, and we'll have to improvise solutions while people are shooting at us. That sounds terrifying. It is, that's why we're good at it. The final straw came when the aliens discovered that the humans had been running combat simulations against their own allies. Timon had ordered his fleet to practice fighting alien-style formations just in case. You're preparing to fight us? Demanded Quindes. We're preparing to fight anyone, Taemin replied calmly. It's what we do. That night, as the alien fleets maintained their perfect formations around Kepler Station, the human ships moved through the darkness like hunting predators. They practiced silent running, surprise attacks, and rapid deployment tactics. The aliens watched and wondered what they had unleashed upon the galaxy. They had called for help against an unstoppable enemy. Instead, they had found an ally that might be more dangerous than anything they were trying to fight. But as reports came in of more worlds falling to the Void Swarm, they knew they had no choice. The machines were coming, and only the humans seemed genuinely excited about the prospect of fighting them. The alarm bells rang through the deep space monitoring station like thunder in the night. Captain Hyunwoo Kim jumped from his chair and ran to the main console. The screen showed signals coming from far beyond their galaxy, signals that should not exist. What is it? Asked his assistant, rushing to his side. Hyunwoo stared at the data. Someone is calling for help, someone very far away. The message was strange. It came in patterns of light and sound that took their computers 3 hours to decode. When the translation finally appeared on screen, Hyunwoo felt his blood turn cold. To any who can hear this message, the words read, "We are the Galactic Council. Our worlds are dying. An ancient evil has awakened. We have tried everything. Our weapons cannot stop them. Our shields cannot hold them. If you have any power, any technology, any hope, please help us. We are running out of time." The message included star maps, pictures of destroyed planets, and videos of massive ships that looked like metal spiders eating entire worlds. The enemy was called the Void Swarm, machines that had slept for thousands of years and now wanted to consume everything alive. Hyunwoo sent the message up the chain of command faster than he had ever sent anything before. Within 6 hours, it reached Admiral Sora Park at Earth Defense Headquarters. Sora was known throughout the military as someone who never showed fear. She had fought in the Mars colony wars and the asteroid belt conflicts, but when she finished reading the alien message, her hands shook slightly. "Get me Dr. Jin-Ho Lee," she ordered. "Now." Dr. Jin-Ho arrived at headquarters looking tired and confused. He was Earth's top expert on theoretical alien technology, but he had never expected to actually see any. "What do you think?" Sora asked, showing him the alien data. Jin-Ho spent 2 hours studying the information. When he looked up, his face was pale. "These aliens are more advanced than us in almost every way. Their energy weapons could destroy our largest ships with a single shot. Their shields could probably stop our biggest nuclear missiles. But," Sora could hear something else in his voice, "but they fight like gentlemen," Jin-Ho continued. "Look at these battle recordings. They line up in neat formations. They fire at each other from long distances. They follow rules. They try to minimize casualties. He paused. They have no idea how to fight dirty. Sora smiled for the first time that day. And this void swarm? Pure logic. Perfect efficiency. It calculates the best moves and makes them. It adapts to enemy tactics but only within logical parameters. Jinho pulled up more data. Admiral, I think we might actually have a chance. Word of the alien message spread quickly through Earth's military command. Within days, every major military leader on the planet had seen the recordings of the Void Swarm destroying alien worlds. Admiral Taemin Cho was the youngest fleet commander in Earth's history. At 35, he had already won 3 major space battles using tactics that older officers called impossible and insane. When he volunteered to lead humanity's response to the alien crisis, nobody was surprised. How many ships can we spare? Taemin asked during the emergency council meeting. 200, replied General Park. Maybe 250 if we pull everything from the outer colonies. The alien data suggested that a proper galactic fleet would have thousands of ships. 200 seemed tiny in comparison. But Taemin just nodded. Good. That's enough to get their attention. Captain Mi Young-song commanded the Soul's Fury, one of Earth's newest battleships. When she heard about the mission, she immediately requested to join the fleet. Why? Her superiors asked. This might be a suicide mission. Mi Young looked at the alien videos again. Because if we don't help them, these machines will eventually find Earth, and I'd rather fight them out there than in our own backyard. The alien message had included coordinates and basic faster-than-light travel instructions. Human scientists had been working on FTL technology for decades, but they had never made it work. The alien blueprints were like finding the missing pieces of a puzzle. Dr. Jinho led the team that modified Earth ships for interstellar travel. It took 3 months of nonstop work. They stripped out everything that wasn't essential and packed the ships with extra weapons, armor, and supplies. The aliens seem to think space battles are clean and organized, Jinho explained to the ship captains. Their weapons are designed for long-range precision combat. Our weapons are designed to work at any range, in any condition, using any method necessary. The alien tactical data showed battles that lasted for days, with both sides maintaining perfect formations and following established protocols. Human battles usually lasted minutes and involved a lot of screaming, explosions, and desperate improvisation. As the fleet prepared for departure, more messages came from the aliens. They sent detailed information about galactic warfare conventions, proper military protocols, and acceptable combat behaviors. They seemed to assume that Earth would want to follow these civilized rules. Taemin read through the protocols with growing amusement. No ramming attacks, no biological weapons, no targeting of civilian infrastructure, no psychological warfare, he summarized. Well, that rules out most of our best tactics. Are we going to follow their rules? Asked Mi Young. Taemin looked at the videos of destroyed alien worlds one more time. We're going to save their civilization. How we do it is up to us. The final message from Earth to the Galactic Council was simple. Help is coming. Hold your positions. The aliens sent back detailed questions about Earth's fleet composition, weapons technology, and tactical preferences. They wanted to coordinate their strategies and ensure proper battlefield integration. Hyun-woo, now promoted to communications director for the mission, sent back an equally simple reply. We'll figure it out when we get there. On launch day, 237, Earth ships activated their new FTL drives and disappeared into the space between stars. Behind them, they left a planet that was already building more ships and training more soldiers. Because if there was one thing humans had learned in their violent history, it was this. There was always another war coming, and you could never be too prepared. The aliens had called for help. They had asked for advanced technology, superior firepower, and civilized military support. Instead, they were about to meet a species that had spent its entire existence learning how to win fights against impossible odds, a species that treated warfare not as a gentlemanly contest, but as a survival skill that you either mastered or died learning. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when you asked Deathworlders for help. and somewhere in the dark between stars the void swarm continued its advance, unaware that its perfectly logical, efficiently calculated plans were about to encounter something it had never faced before: pure, creative, human chaos.